The first thing the human felt was pain. Sharp, sudden, deep. Something had sunk its teeth into his shoulder with the strength of desperation and instinct. He turned his head and saw her blue fur, glowing eyes, and bared fangs. An alien girl. Doglike, furious, terrified. Private Mark Taylor had fought in many strange battles across the stars, but never had one started with being bitten by a girl who looked part wolf, part soldier, and fully enraged. She leapt back, growling in her alien tongue. Her black jumpsuit scraped from the scuffle. They were supposed to be allies. The briefing had been clear. The Zalari pack species was seeking peace after decades of silent isolation. Earth had sent a small group to meet them. Mark had volunteered, not expecting violence. But the bite told him one thing: peace talks had failed before they even began. He clutched his wounded arm, the blood mixing with dirt as he stared at her. She stood tall now, chest rising fast, her tail swaying in warning. Around them, the rocky cavern echoed with low growls and the shuffle of claws. Others were nearby, watching. Mark didn't reach for his weapon. He didn't move. He didn't even speak. He just stared at her, eyes locked. She had expected a reaction, fear, maybe retaliation, but he gave none. Instead, he slowly knelt and placed his weapon on the ground, a gesture of surrender. Or maybe curiosity. Her ears twitched, her head tilted slightly. The growling around them faded. For a moment, even the wind outside the cavern quieted. Then she stepped closer and sniffed at his arm. Not like an animal, more like a trained soldier checking damage on a fellow fighter. Mark could hardly believe it. She was inspecting him. Her claws gently brushed against his skin. No rage now, just confusion. Her voice came out low and hesitant, speaking broken English. "Why did you not strike back?" He answered without thinking. "Because I don't hurt someone unless they deserve it." Her ears flattened against her head. She stared at him for several seconds. Then she said, "You biters do. You always strike back." "Humans bite back worse." Mark smirked. "You bit me first," she blinked. That's when he leaned forward and without warning, bit her on the arm. Not hard, not cruel, but enough to shock her, just as she had shocked him. Her eyes went wide. Her lips parted. She froze. The silence was deep and long. Then she actually barked, a sharp sound, half laugh, half surprise. The sound echoed through the cave. The other Zalari barked back in some strange form of communication. They were laughing, not angry, not insulted, just stunned. "I thought you soft," she said at last, "like cloth. But you have bite." Mark stood, wiping his mouth. "And you've got sharp teeth for a diplomat." She tilted her head again. "I am not diplomat. I am scout. I was told to test the human spirit. They said you would run or scream. Bad orders," Mark said. "Humans don't run easy. Especially when bitten." She smiled then, a real smile. Her fangs didn't look so deadly anymore. Her stance relaxed. The cavern didn't seem so dark. Maybe peace is not lost. Maybe this is how peace starts. With teeth and surprises, Mark looked around. The others had stepped closer now. No weapons, no threats. Just curiosity in their glowing eyes. He nodded. "Let's see where it leads." For the first time, the Zalari girl reached out and touched his hand. Her claws were careful now, her grip firm but gentle. "My name is Raska. You have passed the test, biter." He raised a brow. "Then what now, Raska?" She looked toward the light at the top of the cavern. "Now we take you to our alpha." Mark chuckled. "Just hope your alpha has better manners than you." Her tail flicked. "He does, but less teeth." They began walking together, side by side. The rest of the pack followed behind, quiet and watchful. Somewhere above, a new sun rose over a strange world where a bite had opened the path to something far bigger than either of them expected. Mark followed Raska through the twisting stone tunnels without hesitation. The way she moved low, agile, confident, reminded him of both a predator and a dancer. Her blue tail swayed behind her, and even though she didn't speak, her body language said more than words could. The deeper they went, the warmer the air became. The rocky walls gave off a strange glow, like the stone itself breathed. Strange markings shimmered across the surfaces, written in a language Mark didn't recognize. Raska glanced back to make sure he was still close. "You stay near. This path not safe for strangers," she said without turning her head. "Is that a warning?" he asked, brushing dust from his shoulder. "No, it is advice," she said, slowing as they approached a wide chamber. It opened suddenly into a massive underground hall, lit by crystals hanging from the ceiling like stars. Dozens of Zalari stood in a circle around a central platform. Their fur colors varied: blue, silver, ash gray, but their eyes all turned toward the human. Raska stepped forward. "I bring the one who passed the trial. He has strong teeth." "Strong spirit. He is not like the others." A larger Zalari male stepped onto the platform. His fur was almost white, and he wore armor made from bone and steel. His eyes were colder than the rest. "This is the biter? This is the human?" Mark stood tall. "Name's Mark Taylor, soldier, not a biter." "She bit me first," Raska growled. Under her breath, "Not helping." The Alpha looked down at them. His gaze pierced through Mark like ice. "Why did you not strike her down?" "Because she didn't deserve it," Mark replied. "And I don't hurt people who are scared." That made the crowd murmur. Some of them nodded. Others bared their teeth in disapproval. The Alpha raised a hand and silence returned. "You bit her back. Why?" Mark folded his arms. "To show her what humans are. Not prey, not monsters. Equals." The Alpha stepped forward. His claws tapped the stone floor with slow, heavy clicks. "Would you fight for her, human? Would you bleed for a pack not your own?" Mark looked at Raska. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't speaking. She was waiting. Watching, yes, if it meant something. If it meant peace or survival, I would. The Alpha nodded. "Then prove it. Fight, but not her. Fight the right beast." Gasps rose from the crowd. Raska stepped in front of Mark. "That is old trial. Not needed now. He must be tested," the Alpha said. "No outsider walks into our den without the right." Mark stepped forward and pulled the chains from his wrists. "Fine, let's do it." They led him to a side chamber, larger than the last. A circular pit dug deep into the stone. Mark climbed down alone. The crowd gathered above. Raska didn't look away from him. The gate opened with a sharp metallic clank. From the shadows came the right beast. A creature with thick fur, 6 legs, and eyes that burned red. It didn't roar. It didn't charge. It watched Mark with slow, calculating steps. Mark didn't draw a weapon. He didn't run. He crouched and waited. When the beast lunged, he rolled to the side and grabbed its fur, throwing his weight to the ground. Dust exploded around them. The crowd howled. The beast reared back, trying to shake him off. Mark climbed higher on its back, wrapped one arm around its neck, and clamped his teeth down on the creature's shoulder. It shrieked, not from pain but shock. Mark released and dropped to the ground. The creature stood stunned for a moment. Then it backed away and retreated into the shadows. The gate shut behind it. Silence followed. Then one voice rose, Raska. She barked in approval. The Alpha raised both arms. The right is complete. The biter has proven his heart. Mark climbed out of the pit, covered in dust and sweat. Raska met him halfway. She placed one hand on his chest and looked up at him. "You did not have to bite it," she said quietly. Mark wiped his mouth. "Seemed to work the first time," she laughed again. The crowd did too. This time not out of mockery. Out of respect. Mark stood beside her as the crowd slowly gathered around. Something had changed, not just in their eyes, but in Raska's too. They no longer looked at him like a stranger. They looked at him like one of their own. Mark was no longer just the human guest. He had become something more, something closer to a member of the pack. The Zalari watched him differently now, no more suspicion in their eyes. Only curiosity and interest. After the right beast trial, the Alpha had allowed Mark to stay within the heart of the den. Raska guided him to a quiet chamber carved into the stone, where faint blue light shimmered from the walls. It smelled like earth and warmth and fur. "This is yours now," Raska said, pointing to a bedding platform made of thick hides and crystal-woven cloth. Mark sat down, breathing out. His muscles ached from the fight. His shirt was torn. He rubbed his shoulder where the beast had slammed into him. Raska sat beside him and offered him a flask of strong-smelling water. He took a sip and coughed. "That's not water, it's root burn." "Warms the blood," Raska said. "You'll need it." "Trials leave marks," Mark smiled slightly. "I've had worse." "Your bite still tops the list." She didn't smile back. Instead, she looked down at her own hand. "You did not have to stay. You could have left after the test. Why are you still here?" He leaned back. "Because if Earth ever wants peace with your people, someone has to be the first to stay. Someone has to show we're serious." She looked at him again. Her eyes had changed. "Not sharp now, just focused. You think we want peace?" "I think you want to stop bleeding," Mark said. "And so do we, outside." The sounds of the den echoed, training shouts, clashing weapons, low-pitched howls of the young ones learning to run. It was a society built on instinct and structure. But under all that, Mark saw hope. Later that evening, the Alpha called a gathering in the Great Hall. Mark was brought forward and stood beside Raska. The crowd formed a large circle again. This time, the tone was different. Less tension. More acceptance. The Alpha spoke. This human fought the beast. Spared the scout. Proved his teeth. He now speaks for his kind. Let him speak truth. Mark stepped forward. He didn't have a speech prepared. He didn't need one. He just spoke what he knew. "I came here thinking I'd be facing enemies. But I see now that your people are strong because you fight for each other. I respect that. I want that. And if we're ever going to share this galaxy, we need to stop biting for the wrong reasons." The crowd remained silent. Listening, some nodded. Some watched Raska for a signal. She stepped up beside him and placed a hand on his chest. "He speaks like one of us." "I would fight beside him." The Alpha raised his hand. "Then let there be proof. A hunt. Let the human join the blood-seekers at dawn. If he runs, he is no kin. If he returns with prey, he is one of the pack." Raska's ears twitched. She whispered, "It is dangerous, but it is honor. You will need your strength." "I'll do it," Mark replied. "What are we hunting?" She looked toward the cave roof where faint light spilled in. "A bonehorn. Fast, smart, and deadly." He didn't flinch. "Sounds familiar." That night, Raska stayed near him. She didn't speak much, just watched. She sharpened his borrowed spear, repaired his vest. Her presence was silent comfort. When he asked her why she was helping so much, she answered without looking up, "You bit me. You understand us now. That means I cannot let you fail." At dawn, the hunt began. 5 Zalari warriors, including Raska, lined up at the edge of the forest where sunlight pierced the treetops. Mark stood beside them, holding the spear, eyes locked forward. The forest was thick with vines and strange sounds. Every step felt like a test. Every rustle in the brush made his heart pound. But he stayed close to the others, learning their signals, following their lead. They tracked the bonehorn through broken branches and claw marks on trees. The trail was fresh. The hunt was real. And the danger was growing. Suddenly, the beast leapt from a rocky ridge. The warriors scattered. Mark rolled beneath a swipe of its massive tail and lunged with his spear. The tip struck flesh. The creature shrieked and kicked him back against a tree. Raska charged from the side and slashed its leg. Mark recovered and leapt onto its back. He didn't think. He bit again. Right at the base of the beast's neck. The bonehorn bucked, roared, and fell to the ground with a final groan. The forest grew quiet again. The pack gathered around. Mark stood slowly, covered in sweat and dirt, blood on his teeth. Raska looked at him, stunned. "You bit again." "Why?" He wiped his mouth. "Because I figured it worked twice already," she shook her head. "You are more Zelari than human now, Mark." Didn't disagree. The bonehorn's body was carried back on a stretcher of bark and vine. The warriors howled in victory, their voices echoing across the cliffs as the morning light spread over the rocky lands. Mark walked among them with his head high, the taste of iron still on his tongue. He had proven himself again. Not just with skill, but with instinct. The bite had not been planned. It had been natural. And that made all the difference to the Zelari. They were a species of feeling and impulse. They respected action over words. Back in the den, the Alpha stood before him once more. This time he bowed his head not in weakness, but in respect. "You are of the pack now. You have hunted with us. Bled with us, bit with us. We welcome you, Firefang." Mark blinked. "Firefang?" Raska smiled beside him. "It is a title. It means one who bites with spirit. You have earned it." He looked at the circle of warriors surrounding him. They all nodded. Even the older ones who had once doubted his place. They were now his brothers and sisters. And Raska, she was something more. The celebration that followed filled the halls with warmth and wild rhythm. Drums made from stone and skin thumped through the caves. Fires lit the air with golden flickers. Meat roasted over open flames, and for the first time, Mark laughed freely among them. Raska stayed close. She wore a ceremonial sash across her chest, marked with symbols of the hunt. When Mark asked about the markings, she leaned close and explained. "This one means first blood. This one means loyalty. And this," she said, pointing to the newest one, "means chosen." He looked at her. "Chosen for what?" Her tail twitched. "That depends on what you choose." Mark didn't answer. "Not yet." But he didn't move away either. Later that night, when the fire burned low and most of the warriors slept, Raska led him outside the den to a high ridge. The stars above them burned bright and cold. She sat on a flat stone and gestured. For him to join her. "This world has teeth," she said softly. "But not all bites are cruel. Some are warnings. Some are lessons, and some are beginnings." Mark sat beside her. "What was your bite?" She looked at him. "A mistake. I thought you were like the others, but you stayed. You didn't fear me. You didn't shame me. And when you bit back, I felt something I didn't expect." He waited. Let her finish. "I felt understood. For the first time, I didn't feel like just a scout or a tool for battle. I felt seen. That is why I helped you. That is why I stayed near." Mark nodded slowly. "I didn't come here looking for war. I didn't come looking for you either. But now I can't imagine leaving." Raska didn't reply with words. She placed her hand over his. Her claws were warm now. Her grip was no longer defensive. It was steady and calm. Below them, the den slept. The winds moved softly through the rocks. And for once, the silence wasn't cold. It was comforting. The next morning, the Alpha called another gathering. He announced that Mark would act as an official voice between the humans and the Zelari. The crowd responded with howls of approval. Even the elders agreed. Peace was not guaranteed, but the walls of mistrust had cracked. And through those cracks, something new had started to grow. As the crowd dispersed, Raska stayed beside Mark. Her expression was unreadable at first. Then she said, "There is one last thing left for you to do before the bond is final." Mark raised an eyebrow. "Another test?" "No," she said, stepping closer. "Something more honest than trial. Or fight." Before he could speak again, she leaned in and gently bit his shoulder. Not hard, not painful. Just enough to leave a mark. He smiled and returned the gesture, a soft bite on her wrist. The meaning didn't need words. The bond was real now. Not made by command or fear, but by trust, by instinct, and something deeper they didn't yet name. A new day began with the scent of change in the air. The Zalari den was no longer a hidden place of secrecy and suspicion. It had become a gathering point for something greater. Something bold. Mark stood at the central stone ledge where messages were shared and blood oaths sworn. He wore armor now. Not human-made, but Zalari forged. It was light and strong, made from beast hide and sharp-edged stone, engraved with symbols of his trials. Across his chest was the Firefang sigil, freshly carved and colored with crimson dust. Beside him, Raska stood silent and tall. She had tied her hair back and painted 3 black lines across her cheek. She was no longer just a scout. She was something more. A voice, a protector, a partner. The Alpha raised his clawed hand and addressed the gathered pack. The outsider is no longer outsider. The human who bled and bit has become one of us. He speaks with bite and honor. His bond with our kind is marked not by treaty, but by fang. Mark stepped forward. I came to meet a strange people. I found warriors. I found wildness. And I found something better than peace. I found belonging. The warriors howled in agreement. Even the youngest cubs barked in celebration. No one questioned it now. The human was Zalari in heart. That mattered more than his skin or tongue, but the work was not done. Raska leaned close and whispered, "There are still other dens, other packs. Not all are ready to accept this union. Then we show them what it means," Mark said. "We don't just talk peace. We live it," they prepared. For a journey across the rocky plains. 5 warriors joined them, handpicked by the Alpha. Each of them had witnessed the Bonehorn hunt and the bite ritual. Each of them believed in what came next. As they walked, Raska told stories. She spoke of old battles, lost siblings, and dreams, once thought foolish. Mark listened, sometimes adding his own tales. Earth and Zalari were not so different. Pain and pride sounded the same in any voice. When they reached the second den, they were met with spears. The pack there was older, more cautious. Their Alpha did not smile. He stared at Mark and growled, "Why bring a human to our sacred stones?" Mark didn't back away. He stepped forward and knelt. Not to take, not to rule, to share. The older Alpha studied him. His eyes narrowed. Then he turned to Raska. "You were bitten by this one, yes?" She nodded. "And I bit back. Now, we both carry marks. We both carry truth." The tension cracked. The older Alpha lowered his spear. "Then let the story be heard. Let the pack decide." That night, Mark sat before a new fire and told the tale again. Not with pride, but with purpose. When he spoke of the first bite, some gasped. When he told of the bite returned, they leaned closer. And when he spoke of Raska's bond, no one interrupted. By dawn, the second pack had lowered their weapons. Not all had joined in song, but none had challenged the Firefang. That was enough. On the return journey, Raska walked beside Mark in silence. Then she said, "You do not realize it, but your bite changed everything." He looked at her. "I only followed instinct. That's what makes it real," she replied. They returned to the first den as sun rose. The young ones ran to meet them. The fires were still burning, waiting. The Alpha stepped forward and asked only one question. "Will the other packs follow?" Mark answered. "Some already do. The rest will learn." The Alpha nodded. "Then you must teach them. Bite if you must. But bite with reason." That evening, under the high ridge where stars touched the rock, Raska and Mark sat again. This time, there were no tests, no rituals, just quiet peace. She rested her head on his shoulder and let the silence speak. Together they had carved something new into 2 histories. Something wild and lasting. Something born not from fear or force, but from teeth, trust, and a bond sealed not by blood, but by bite.